Let's start by quickly introducing today's speakers. I'm joined by Todd Wright and Aaron Berg. Todd Wright leads global product marketing for Data Direct Solutions for Progress. He works closely with the product management and sales organizations to create and promote materials that are relevant and valuable to Progress customers. Todd is instrumental in developing customer relationships and creating strategic marketing plans that drive awareness, consideration, education, and demand for Progress. And next up, we have Aaron Berg. Aaron is a senior solutions engineer who's been with Progress for over 4 years. He has worked in the IT space for over 20 years, working in network administration and data connectivity. His primary focus today is on bridging the gap between data and analytics by using open standards such as ODBC, JDBC, and OData and REST. This broad experience has allowed him to be a valuable resource for customers looking to implement Progress Data Direct's connectivity solutions. I'm really excited to have both Todd and Aaron with us today. But now I'm going to turn it over to them to start the presentation.
All right, thanks, Susan, and hello to everyone on the webcast today. To kick things off, let's start with why many of us are here today, and that's because many of us, including here at Progress Data Direct, use Salesforce as our system of choice. And to really highlight how well Salesforce is doing, and in fact, how many people are actually using Salesforce, let's look at some of these figures. Number one, over 21 billion in revenue in 2021 so far, a 19.8% share of the CRM market, more than its 4 leading competitors combined. 150,000 organizations are using Salesforce, and staggering number right here as well. In the last 10 years, compound annual growth is over 29% for Salesforce. So obviously, a lot of us are using it out in the market, and they continue to grow. So with all that said, it goes without saying that there is a wealth of data and insights within Salesforce system. And what organizations really do with that data will really determine their success and failure. What many of us have learned within the last decade or so, that for reporting and analytics and even machine learning initiatives to have any true value, they must be populated with real-time data from relevant data sources. And if not, many of the decisions could rely on opinions or even worse, just guessing from business leaders or executives. So it is without surprise that the leader in data connectivity, Data Direct from Progress, has functionality and supports Salesforce. And this really comes in 2 main areas. First of all, Data Direct enables analytics and reporting against your Salesforce data using your own BI tools instead of Salesforce built-in reporting. This is really possible because many of the popular BI tools that are out there have embedded Salesforce driver to connect to Salesforce. That meaning they have embedded Data Direct within their BI solution. And even the ones that don't, the other 20% or so, our drivers actually have plugins to almost all BI tools for secure and reliable connectivity to Salesforce. And what do both of those mean? Both result in no need to export Salesforce data to a data warehouse, essentially meaning you can, with Data Direct, report against live Salesforce data for real-time information. And anyone that's in the analytics and reporting space know that real-time information is really where the true value is. So moving on, the second main reason is Data Direct enables you to view external data from within your Salesforce application or Salesforce reports. And this is essentially done by the fact that Data Direct's Salesforce Connect feature uses OData to connect to external data. And the Data Direct also, for Salesforce, can expose any data source as OData. This allows you to view external data from Salesforce without having to relocate and store that data in Salesforce, resulting in a huge cost savings for organizations. And for those that might not be fully familiar with OData, we're going to go a little bit into that and what it's all about within the demo portion. So on the topic, you might have heard the words cost savings, and that's what Data Direct from Progress is really all about. On top of all of the cost savings or all the functionality that Data Direct provides, it's really the cost savings as well that's truly a benefit to you and your organizations. And the cost savings are really found in 3 main ways. As mentioned in the previous slide, Data Direct saves orgs money on the relocating and saving of data, thus reducing the really expensive storage costs within Salesforce that can really add up. But also, Data Direct provides a tremendous savings on monthly licensing costs against many native connections that you'll see out in the market. So I will say with a caveat, this is of course dependent on each individual need and situation that we have with the organization. So it definitely makes sense to be in contact with your Progress Data Direct rep to learn more as you engage more with our company. And finally, data source groupings. Data Direct allows you to perform data source groupings, which can reduce the number of Salesforce Connect licenses that you need. The fewer that you have, of course, the less that you'll be paying on a monthly basis. And while still allowing you to access multiple data sources, that is common in the market today. So really, it goes without saying that, and it's no wonder that 80% of all leading BI vendors partner with Data Direct, and hundreds of other orgs have partnered with us for data connection requirements. A real standout example of this is a leading cloud provider that has a customer that was in need of real-time data connections to Salesforce. As most of us know, ETL is not really a viable option all the time, and creating a custom connection was out of the question for this organization, both from a cost and time perspective. So from that, this cloud provider turned to Data Direct for their needs. Thankfully for this organization, and I'm happy to say as well, within minutes of use, the cloud provider was able to create an OData-based REST API connection to Salesforce, as opposed to possibly taking months. And the end result, as you can imagine, they save hundreds of hours on labor by not having to pull IT resources of critical projects to create a custom connection, which no organization really wants to do. And even more important, their client remains loyal because the requirements were met for real-time data connections to Salesforce. And this is just one example of many regarding how Data Direct is helping organizations succeed. And to show you how we are doing all this, I'd like to turn it over to Aaron now to show you a bit about what Data Direct is all about. Aaron?
Right. Well, thank you, Todd, for going through how we can help companies save with their Salesforce expenses. For the demo part of this, I want to go through how we can help expose those on-prem external data sources to Salesforce using the Salesforce Connect feature. Now, what Salesforce Connect does is it allows you to take those sources and view them where they live. So you don't actually have to copy those data sources into Salesforce. You actually are accessing them as the single source of truth. And it does this through what I like kind of call the magic of OData. OData being a REST API, I like to call it SQL over REST. Microsoft started this about 15 years ago. And you'll see it in a lot of BI tools. It's become a very common way to connect the data over the REST protocol. It makes it really easy to integrate when you're talking with Salesforce. Now, the nice thing in Salesforce is you can create these external objects. So normally you'll have standard objects out of the box, custom objects that you can build in Salesforce, those also being objects that are using data that's stored in Salesforce. Now, when you come to these external objects, they're actually just storing the metadata or of the remote data sources. So here on the right, you'll see like the orders, invoices, benefits, those are all reaching out to data sources that might be hosted in the cloud or on-prem. So for the demo here, I'm going to do a real quick architecture overview of the environment that I'm using. And then I will also then show how we're going to connect to an on-prem SQL server. We're going to OData enable that. And then we're going to connect to that endpoint from Salesforce. And then inside of Salesforce, I'm going to show you how we can view and update that because this is a full CRUD solution. And then we'll go back over to Todd and pick it up for questions. So from an architecture point of view, what I'm doing here is we have our hybrid data pipeline servers running in AWS. And those are able to connect out to data sources, whether either directly or in the cloud or even remote. And it does that using this on-premises connector. And this is a small Windows agent that runs where it has network access to the data, uses outbound SSL to connect back to the hybrid data pipeline. and gives you that secure access without having to set up a VPN or SSH tunnel. And then finally, we're going to come over here and consume that data in Salesforce using the OData REST API. So to start, over here on where I have my SQL Server, you'll see I have SQL Server running here, and then I've installed that hybrid data pipeline on-premises connector, just that simple Windows agent. And it's reaching out to the hybrid data pipeline server. We can do a test connect on that, validate its connectivity. So it makes it very easy to do that integration. When we go to the hybrid data pipeline server now, and we're going to log into that, all right, we're going to create a new data source in the hybrid data pipeline. We'll be connecting to a SQL server, the one that we installed the on-premises connector to access. We're going to name our data source, put in the credentials to access it, as well as the name of the database. We're going to put in the connector ID, and then click Test Connect. Once we have successfully connected, we can now go to the OData tab, and here we'll use OData version 4 to set up the schema mapping to associate the on-prem data source or as an OData endpoint. We're going to choose our albums. We'll add that to our map. We'll choose the artist table as well and add that to the map. And then we're going to click Save Map and save one more time. And you'll see here that it's going to build out that schema mapping. Once that's completed, we're going to end up with the OData endpoint, which you see here. So we're going to take that OData endpoint, and now we're going to go over to Salesforce, where we're going to connect to that data source. So we're going to go into Setup inside of Salesforce. We'll choose our external data, external data sources. We'll click New External Data Source, and here we're going to name it. We're going to choose OData v4. We will put in the URL that we just created through the hybrid data pipeline. We're going to make this a writable object. And then we'll change our authentication and set our credentials. And we will click Save. Once that's done, we'll click Validate and Sync. We'll choose the two tables, and this was what maps those to the external objects inside of Salesforce. You'll see that those have been mapped. And once that's done, we can now create a tab. I find this a good way to view these. So if we go to Tabs, and we'll create a new custom object tab. We're going to choose our object here. In this case, we're going to choose Artists. We're going to choose our tab style. And we'll click Next. And then Next. And then Save. Once the tab has been created, we can now go back to one of the apps in Salesforce and view that tab. You'll see the Artist tab here on the top. I'm going to change our view to all. And then we're going to also modify the fields that we can see. So I'm going to add the artist ID and the name field. And then we're going to move those up a little bit. And we'll move the artist ID up as well. We'll click Save. And now you'll see this live data coming back from that on-premise database. Now, one cool thing we can do, and you'll actually see the URL here pointing to it, is we can actually create a new record here to show that we have full write capabilities. And to use my stage name here, we'll save that. Now we've created Artist 300. If we go back to our SQL server and run a query, you'll see that we've already written that back. All right. So as you can see, it's really a quick way to expose that on-prem data source to Salesforce, be able to use it inside of Salesforce. and save you a lot of time and cost in terms of having to move data into Salesforce. So with that, I think I'll hand it back over to Todd for questions.
Hey, thanks, Aaron. That was really great. Yeah, as it shows here on the slide, we're ready for questions. Looks like we have a few that have come through the queue so far, so let's jump right into it. The first question is, as expected probably, can you use your connector with any analytics tools? I know that we can pretty much, if not all, connect to all the commercial analytics providers out in the space, such as the SaaSes, of course, and others. Aaron, any thoughts on that? And how about open source? Can we connect to like the Pythons and the Rs of the world for analytics?
So yeah, and really we really focus on standards here at DataDirect. So we're by allowing you to have ODBC or JDBC access to your data, whether it be directly using our Salesforce drivers or through the hybrid data pipeline, you can use those connectors with any tools that support ODBC or JDBC. So you could use like ODBC connectors inside of like your .NET code, or even with like Python with PyODBC. You could use it with Power BI, Tableau, even Excel. And actually one extra thing that's really nice is with hybrid data pipeline, you have the ability to OData enable, as we saw in the demo. And you can use that, obviously you saw with Salesforce, but many of these analytics tools like the Power BIs and Tableaus and even Excel support connecting to OData. So there you could connect to the data without even needing to use a driver, which is really nice, makes it a lot easier. We see some people using this almost like a data hub concept. So not just for sharing data outside of your network, but actually as a secure way to share data inside the network. So maybe you have users that need access to a wide range of data sources for analytics. This is a way to put some controls on that, not have to distribute a driver, and really kind of standardize on how you share information internally.
Okay, makes complete sense. Thanks. Let's see, we had another question fly in. This will probably be determined by how much technical skills you have, I imagine. How much training does it take to learn your product? I imagine, for yourself, compared to someone like me that's not as technical, there might be a different learning curve. But in general, from your field experience, what are you seeing out there as far as how long it's really taking people from various roles to get up and going with Progress Data Direct connections?
I'm confident, Todd, with our tutorials and documentation, we could get you going. But,
even me, huh?
Yeah. So really, the nice thing is for like say the Salesforce driver, I mean that's really a straightforward installation where you want to consume the data, and we have tutorials and the docs on that. So that's something you're up and running, and pretty much as soon as you get it installed and get authenticated to Salesforce. With the hybrid data pipeline, that depending on where you want to install, and if you want to install in a highly available configuration and say like a cloud provider like AWS or Azure behind a load balancer, there's a little bit more configuration, but again, we have tutorials for all of that. So it's the type of thing where you're looking at hours to maybe a couple days of working with it to get up and running, but it's not something that we would expect you would need to have bring in a lot of extra resources, or even need any sort of professional services for.
Yeah, so we're not talking 2 months of consulting, bringing in 15 people to your organization by any means.
Right, and that's what's really nice. Like when I mentioned that data hub or data gateway, is a lot of the other products that tend to do those types of things can require a pretty extensive team to get them up and running.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Let's see, we have another question as well. Common use cases for Salesforce Connector. I know we have a lot of people that are interested in connecting to Salesforce Einstein and Salesforce Chatter. But once again, Aaron, from your field experience, is there any particular things that people are looking for? Any BI or analytics tools that stick out more than any others, so forth?
Yeah, I mean, I think the tools I mentioned, another use we see very frequently with the Salesforce connector are with ETL tools, where people want to take the data that is in Salesforce and bring it into a data warehouse they have control over. So kind of a reading the data out of Salesforce for, another place to access it, both kind of to back it up, so to speak, outside of Salesforce, but also maybe make it a little bit faster to access if you have it in your own data warehouse. So that's a pretty common use case. We've seen that with like AWS Glue and even some of the Informatica tools and whatnot.
Okay.
So yeah.
Interesting. Well, Aaron, I think that's it with the questions. It's going to be pretty short and sweet today. And I thank you for tuning in today. And Aaron, I appreciate your time as well.
My pleasure. And yeah, looking forward to speaking with anyone that has any other questions or use cases.
All right. This concludes the webinar. Appreciate it, everyone. Thank you.